Coming up on Network Africa. The World Health Organization describes the situation in Ethiopia's conflict-hit Tigray region as horrific. Spain deploys army to repel an influx of migrants trying to enter the country from Morocco. Plus, Mozambique renews push for extradition of former Finance Minister Manuel Chang from South Africa. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. The head of the World Health Organization has described the situation in Ethiopia's conflict-hit Tigray region as horrific. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, who is from Tigray, says people are dying of hunger with malnutrition spreading fast. He also criticized the fact that health services have been destroyed and sexual assault is rampant in the region. His comments echo many international leaders and agencies that have also been calling for full humanitarian access and an end to the blocking of aid.
Ethiopia is, maybe if I use one word, horrific, very horrific. 4.5 to almost 5 million people need humanitarian aid. 91% need food aid. And many people have started dying actually because of hunger. And severe and acute malnutrition is becoming rampant. Majority of the people now residing in Tigray, Ethiopia, I don't think even they worry about COVID. So COVID is the least of their concerns, least actually. It's not even their concern. And there is no service, of course, but it's not even a concern now, because the chance of dying from all the issues, all the problems I have just outlined is really high. Compared to that, COVID is nothing.
Spain says it's deploying the army in the North African enclave of Ceuta to repel migrants trying to enter from Morocco. A record 5,000 people arrived on Monday, and Moroccan border guards reportedly did nothing to stop them. Police sources say the number could increase further. Spanish officials have accused Morocco of using the migrants as blackmail, and diplomatic relations have been tensed after the leader of the Polisario Front was allowed into Spain for coronavirus treatment. But Rabat has denied any links between the exodus of migrants and the Polisario Front. The nationalist group is fighting Morocco over control of the Western Sahara. Mozambique has renewed its push for the extradition from South Africa of former Finance Minister Manuel Chang, who is wanted in the U.S. to face corruption and financial fraud charges. Mr. Chang was arrested in December 2018 in Johannesburg at the request of the U.S. while on his way to Dubai. He signed off loans that were taken out between 2013 and 2016, which pushed Mozambique into a debt crisis in what has become known as the tuna bond scandal. Mr. Chang has denied any wrongdoing, but Mozambique insists that the former minister has cases to answer in the country and should not be extradited to the U.S. A number of African leaders are in Paris for a summit on African economies and finding ways to help the continent post-COVID-19. On Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed world leaders in Paris's Elysee Presidential Palace. African heads of state, including Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, Egypt's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Burkina Faso's Roch Marc Kabore, South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, and Chad's Prime Minister Albert Pahimi arrived one by one at the presidential palace. The summit aims to discuss the number of ways of providing financial support to aid African economies' relaunch after the COVID-19 crisis. And President Macron has called this a new deal for the continent's nations.
Today, with your leadership and generous support on this, we are able to create this last hurdle, which would signal the return of Sudan to the development community. And this is where we will be able to create the jobs that will respond to the aspiration of the young people.
Well, joining us now for more on this is the VOA's correspondent, Lisa Bryant in Paris. Thank you, Lisa, for speaking to us. What more can you tell us about discussions that held today at the summit?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be talking with you today. Well, it's good to give sort of a bit of a backdrop to this summit. Macron was, it's a 2-day sort of back-to-back summit. Yesterday was on Sudan, and today is on the broader issue of the African continent emerging from the backlash, let's say, of the financial backlash of coronavirus. Coronavirus itself has perhaps touched the African continent less than other regions of the world, but Africa is facing, a major economic downturn, as many people who are living in different African countries know very well. Tourism is down. For there are different reasons, oil and gas prices have plummeted, so President Macron is saying, okay, as you said, we need a new deal for Africa. And so he's trying to get world leaders. There are about 30 European and African heads of states to meet together and to try to see, in particular, how to help finance Africa's recovery. The continent has not had the kinds of huge influxes of cash that we've seen with the European Union and the United States. And so it needs support. And the IMF in particular, or estimates in general, say that the continent faces nearly $300 billion in net deficit by the end of 2023. Growth in Africa is going to be less than the rest of the world. The economic output is going to be around 3.2%, the IMF said. So all of these reasons are sort of have galvanized President Macron to call these leaders together.
Well, we know of Sudan, yesterday France giving sort of a debt relief to Sudan. What other resolutions, can you tell us, has been made so far?
Yeah, that's correct about Sudan. President Macron has essentially said that there was a deal in place to cancel about $5 billion of French debt, and hopefully other countries will be helping. There are different deals in place. Just to add, it sounds like that other IMF member states are going to help clear tens of millions of dollars of Sudan's arrears to the IMF. So that's a big deal. We're going to hear more with the press conference at the end of this summit, which is coming up in about an hour. But there are a number of different areas. For example, we have, the European Union is Ursula von der Leyen is saying she's willing to discuss. The EU is willing to discuss this vaccine patent waiver that the United States has raised. That could be a big deal for Africa, not in the immediate future, because what Africa needs is vaccines for coronavirus, but in the longer term. There are also discussions in areas like the Mozambican leader is in Paris. That's a big deal for different reasons, because there is conflict in Mozambique. As you noted, the Egyptian president is there, perhaps discussions on what's been going on in Israel and Gaza, no doubt. And also there's going to be DRC's president, Felix Tshisekedi, who the African Union chair, who's going to be co-hosting the press conference, and we'll get some more sort of real ideas about how this summit has sort of concluded.
All right then, thank you so much, Lisa Bryans, VOA's correspondent in Paris. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Moving on to other stories, the latest attempt by the former leader of the Movement for the Emancipation of the Niger Delta, Henry Oka, to challenge his conviction by the South African authorities has been stalled, as the trial judge, Masabela, insisted it be struck off the roll for now, till the applicant is satisfied with his document preparation process and also relevant documents distributed to all parties. Mr. Oka, who is representing himself in the matter, claims he is being frustrated by the prison authorities with regard to access to communication and legal documents relevant for his case preparation.
Since his conviction in 2013 over the Abuja and Warri bombings, Mr. Henry Oka has repeatedly challenged his trial and conviction in South Africa under the Anti-Terrorism Act. At some point, the Supreme Court of Appeals, sitting in Bloemfontein, granted some of his prayers by cutting down his 24-year sentence by 4 years. These 4 years were later reinstated during another challenge by the Constitutional Court, which believed that the other court had erred in its ruling. Recently, Mr. Oka sent out a petition to the Justice and Correctional Services Minister, Mr. Ronald Lamola, which is titled Unceasing Interference in Judicial Processes. In that petition, he claimed that the department is sabotaging his appeals as well as his bail application, which is what has brought us to the South Gauteng High Court this Tuesday. Mr. Oka came before Judge Masabela with an application for leave to appeal his conviction by Judge Niels Claassen, as well as an application for bail, him representing himself against the state. That couldn't happen as he complained to the judge about his lack of access to communication channels with people who could help him prepare documents. The judge spent a long time seeking clarity on what exactly Mr. Oka is seeking or needs to prepare, and also gave him legal clarity on the right processes. At the end, the judge insisted that the case be struck off the roll for now, till the applicant is able to file an application on his said frustrations to the motions court, which can direct the correctional services to ensure he has access to all he needs to prepare for the case in the interest of fair hearing. A date for the case can be fixed after that. Meanwhile, on Monday the 24th, Mr. Oka is expected before Pretoria High Court, where he is also challenging a 2019 ruling on his application against the constitutionality of his trial, where Judge Wavundla said he has no jurisdiction to handle the application, seeking a declaration that his detention has been unlawful. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
The International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda is urging the Libyan government of national unity to take urgent steps to put an end to the crimes committed in detention centers. While briefing the Council on the situation in Libya, the ICC Chief Prosecutor says the recent inauguration of a new interim government of national unity is commendable, but lasting peace and stability remains crucial pillars of development and protection of human rights in Libya. She also adds that members of her office have traveled to Libya, interviewed witnesses, and received essential documents and materials from various sources.
I urge the government of national unity to take urgent steps to put an end to the crimes committed in detention centers and to fully investigate allegations of arbitrary detention, torture, confiscation of property, rape, and other forms of sexual violence, including in prisons and detention facilities. The violent silencing of public critics as a method to terrorize the civilian population reached another low point with the despicable murder of human rights lawyer Ms. Hanan al-Barassi in Benghazi in November of last year. The office condemns these crimes in the strongest possible terms and calls upon the civil and military authorities in Libya to duly investigate and prosecute the persons responsible for these crimes.
I see no objection.
Still ahead on the program. President Paul Kagame warns against racist attitudes towards Rwanda's judicial system as he seeks fair trial for Paul RUSESABAGINA. Thanks for staying with us. Here in Nigeria, stakeholders in Ondo State are advocating for the commercial cultivation of cannabis sativa for medical and other commercial purposes in the state. Speaking at a virtual conference, speakers outlined the numerous health and medical benefits of cannabis sativa, hence the championing the quest to begin cultivation in Ondo State. A member of the Federal House of Representatives, Benjamin Kalu, calls for the legalization of cannabis production in Nigeria, stating that it will have enormous economical benefits for the nation.
Cannabis sativa is an annual herbaceous flowering plant native to Eastern Asia that has spread globally due to widespread cultivation. In recent years, individuals and nations are advocating for the commercial cultivation of cannabis sativa for legal distribution and medical consumption. In Nigeria, statistics show that Ondo State in the southwest region has the biggest cannabis farms in the country, though its cultivations remains illegal. Many have concluded that cannabidiol oil can be used for numerous medical purposes like curbing insomnia or arthritis.
As it becomes obvious that industrial hemp is a viable prospect for our government's economic diversification efforts. For this to happen, a candid discourse must be held by all stakeholders on the modalities for legalization, licensing, and regulation of the industry.
Cannabidiol, that's what we call the CBD. It's an oil. It's different from the THC. So it is the CBD oil that is going to be used medically to solve problems in pain and trauma. We are talking of severe pain and trauma.
A sentiment shared by the chairman of the House Committee on Media and Public Affairs, Benjamin Kalu, who is pushing for legalization to cannabis production in Nigeria for medical use.
Cannabis sativa, like any other medicinal plant, other medicinal, it has alkaloids, over 120 alkaloids. When I say alkaloids, these are substances, either for medicinal use or non-medicinal use, medicinal active or non-medicinal active. You find in plants. Some have 300 alkaloids.
Aside from the medicinal benefits of cannabis, these stakeholders are also pushing to show that there are other enormous economic benefits of cannabis to legalize its cultivation.
Moving on to South Sudan, the UN Special Representative for the country, Nicholas Haysom, has visited 4 out of 10 states in the world's youngest nation to better understand issues that the South Sudanese people face across the country. Upon arrival at all 4 locations, Mr. Haysom also met with state government officials and held a preliminary discussion on greater cooperation between the peacekeeping mission and the South Sudanese government. He's also scheduled to visit the remaining states and unmissed field offices in the coming week.
I have to say mostly I've been in listening mode because my job is to try and understand and not to pronounce, but we were able to interrogate some of the issues and to look at the difficulties and conditionalities which we'll have to apply in dealing with difficult issues such as intercommunal conflict, the humanitarian crisis, political progress, and so on.
The United Nations has organized the 2-day workshop on the role of the media in the permanent constitution-making process in South Sudan. Organized by several UN agencies, South Sudanese journalists are being encouraged to continue in their vital role of reporting, educating, and disseminating information for civic engagement and public participation. highlighting that South Sudan was approaching its 10th anniversary after gaining independence from its northern neighbor Sudan. Guy Bennett, the political affairs chief of UNMISS, says the country is at a critical point with regard to implementing the provisions of the peace agreement.
This process, this constitution-making process, will lay the foundation for the electoral system and pave the way for elections. Article 6.13 of the peace agreement states that the process of permanent constitution-making shall be led and owned by the people of South Sudan. It highlights a participatory and inclusive process between citizens and political leaders in South Sudan. Popular participation in constitution making is premised on the idea that democratic constitutions should be created and adopted through dialogue and not just dominated by elites. This form of constitution making is promoted by the UN and many other international organizations, especially in support of peace-building efforts.
That this is a history-making exercise. The extent to which it is done, if it is inclusive, you achieve a society that is more cohesive, where the social contract is evident. If it is divisive and exclusive, you achieve a society that builds a foundation of polarization and hostility for the future. This country has come a long way. This is your opportunity to cement the peace and achieve the prosperity that I believe is the destiny of South Sudan.
Rwanda's President Paul Kagame says he wants to see a fair trial for Paul RUSESABAGINA, the man portrayed as a hero in the 2004 Hollywood movie about the Rwandan genocide. Mr. RUSESABAGINA says he was illegally abducted in Dubai last year and flown to Rwanda, and has recently said he will not appear in court again as he does not expect to receive justice. But President Kagame is warning the international media against racist attitudes towards Rwanda's judicial system. He also says there is nothing wrong with how Mr. RUSESABAGINA was arrested. Mr. RUSESABAGINA is accused of terror charges related to deadly attacks in Rwanda in 2018 and 2009 by the FLN, the armed wing of the Rwandan Movement for Democratic Change, a coalition of opposition parties of which he is vice president. Well, his lawyers have denied the charges against him. It appears construction is booming in Dakar, Senegal, where unfinished apartment block towers over most streets, there are exposed concrete bricks, a dull uniform grey in one site. However, a building stands out in one site. The bricks the workers are laying are made of raw red earth. Concrete is inexpensive and used with abandon in Senegal's capital, but it is poorly suited for the West African heat. Earth naturally regulates heat and humidity. Well, that's according to the founder of Worofila, an architecture firm that specializes in bioclimatic design. Take a look.
Amid a construction boom, Senegal's capital Dakar is a sea of concrete. But in the Ngor neighborhood, one building stands out from the uniform gray. Its red bricks are made from raw earth. But this isn't just about color, says Nzinga Mboop, co-founder of architecture firm Worofila. So I think there's been a bit of divergence from just very basic principles, which is orientation, using the materials that you have locally, only because they sort of respond better to the climate. You know, Earth had great inertia for sort of a hot and dry climate, as we have here. Even for tropical climate, it works really well in regulating the temperature. There's also an environmental benefit. The production of cement, the key ingredient in concrete, is estimated to account for around 8% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. The earth bricks are made from mixing soil with small amounts of cement and water, which are then compressed and left to dry. Worofila has worked on several projects with Elementaire, a company that makes the compressed earth bricks. Dudu Demi says there's a lot more interest today than when he founded the business a decade ago. But he describes it as a drop of water when you look at Dakar. Most houses in the capital are still made with inexpensive concrete. Warafila has now been long-listed for the Ashton Award, a UK prize highlighting global climate solutions. And the team hopes that will raise visibility. Mboop says although people may not have heard of earth construction, the concept resonates when it's explained. Senegal's traditional homes were made this way, and people remember how their grandmother's house in the village was somehow always cool.
That's the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.